We're going ahead now, we're going to do the back. And I'm going to keep this with the muslin on top of it, so you can see that that was already done. Now the back isn't folded, it's just a plain piece of paper. Why is that? Because you have to get into the garment somehow. So you would probably need a zipper in the back of this garment, or buttons, or some kind of closure. And because I still folded this back, I'm going to leave it that way, and I'll explain that. So the first thing we're going to need to do is draw a line. So I'm taking any of the markings that we have here, and I'm going to go ahead and draw in a straight line. These markings on special pattern making paper are here for that reason, so that you can make perfect lines. I'm then going to put the back onto that straight line, like that. I'm going to do the same thing and actually tack this down right on that line. So you have it like that. Again, I'm putting the tacks inside of the seam allowance. So there we go. And this is the back dart. There's no apex in the back because the apex is just on the center front bust. But there is the end of the dart, and I'm going to put a tack right on the end of that dart. Again, I have my ease, so we're going to be tracing the outside lines. And you just want to put the tacks wherever it is that can help you keep it down. Okay, let's get a better tack. I'm going to then use my large prong tracing wheel, and I'm going to go and use the outside lines. These are the seam lines again. Holding it down. I've got the armhole all the way up, shoulder seam, neckline, and we're going to do the waistline. We're going to do the dart. Okay. And we're doing the end there on the waistline. Now that everything is traced, I'm going to go ahead and take the tacks off, like that, and move the muslin over. So now we're going to true in those lines again. Truing in is taking all the markings and all the dots and making either a curved line or a straight line that's ever needed. Now this is the center back like we talked about. And because it needs some sort of a closure, I'm going to actually use and give you an inch seam allowance to that. So here we go, like that. That's going to be doesn't look like an inch perfectly, does it? It's kind of hard with marker. I'm going to make it 1/4 of an inch perpendicular at the neckline, and as well as the hemline. I'm going to give it a straight line from the end of that dart to the waist, like that. I'm going to give you a straight line on the side seam, like that. Straight line again will be on your shoulder seam. And then the rest is going to be a curved line. I'm going to take the French curve, and there's little holes in the French curve. There's different indications on how you move it for the front or the back. So we're going to follow these lines as much as we can. Follow the back curve. I'm going to go ahead and do back curve, the waistline curve, and like the front, we're not really sure what's going to happen with this dart, so I'm giving you a half moon again. I'm going to go ahead and put this down and true this line as well. We also have to make sure that this all matches with the front paper pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in like that. Seam allowance again. Necklines usually are 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to give you that 1/4 of an inch real quickly on the neckline. Okay. Shoulder lines or seams will be a 1/2 of an inch. Armholes are usually about a 1/2 an inch. They can be a 1/4 of an inch depending if it's a special design line. But this basic design, we're going to do a 1/2 of an inch. I'm just putting little markings so that I have something to indicate where I'm going to cut. 1/2 of an inch here on the side And we've got that here as well on the hem, and that's why I don't use markers. Messes up your ruler. Okay, we're going to do that here. Okay, and then of course it has to be straight on the center back like that. Now we're ready to cut this portion as well, and I'm going to do that. Okay. So this is how you transfer a basic design to paper so you can cut. I know when you watch Project Runway and all those other shows, they don't do this. Well, if you're strapped for time and you're only making one of any particular piece, you could just use the muslin as your pattern. But generally you want to put it into paper so that you can actually make it again or get a more accurate cutting of your fabric. It's really not accurate to stay on the muslin. Okay, so I'm taking this extra paper away, and that's gone. So now we have the front and the back. There's a few more things that have to be done. Again, we have to true this dart. So the first thing we're going to do is fold back the line that's closest to the back seam, which is what I'm doing here, like that. Then I'm going to take this dart and put my finger here as well and let it kind of 3D happen. I'm letting it curve. It makes a little concave, and it's just slightly off there as well. So I'm going to fix that. Okay, and this is, here we go. Now that I fixed that line, I have to fix the actual cutting line. So it might be a little bit higher. Then I'm going to take my scissor as it's still closed and cut it. So now we have that shape as well on that dart. Another thing that we have to true is make sure that the front seam allowance is the same length as the back seam allowance. So I'm going to fold back the back seam, and I'm going to carry it over to the front and make sure that that's accurate. And we have about a 1/16 of an inch difference here, and I'm going to fix that and just raise that slightly like that. And that means it's going to have to be cut just slightly here. Okay. And another thing we need to do is make sure that the shoulder seams are the same. I'm going to fold back the back and check, and we have it again. Maybe it's about a 1/16 of an inch off. I'm just going to kind of blend that line and take a little bit off the center back. There you go. There you go. So these pieces are ready. The only other pieces now we need is the facing. The reason why we need a facing is because it's the only way you can clean the edges of a garment. In the front, there was a little bit of gathers on this, so we would have to then clean this, is the terminology that's used in the industry, with a facing like this. Let's find the front, where you would sew them together like that, and then turn it over and you would get a clean finish like that. So let's go ahead and do that really quickly. The center front is on the fold, so that means the facing has to be on the fold. I'm going to take a piece of paper, I'm going to fold it back, okay, like this, and I'm going to put this way so you can see, and put the center front facing. The facing is interesting because there's no extra fabric here for the gathers. This is so that it has a length of where the actual gathers stop. So I'm going to go ahead and tack this down on the muslin like that. There you go. And I'm going to trace the seam line as well on this. There you go. And this has a notch because this is where the gathers stop. I'm going to go ahead and put the side seam. This is the armhole. And this shape is the bottom of the facing. So I'm going to go ahead and trace that shape as well. And that's the front. I'm taking the push pins off like that. Okay, well now we're going to true all the lines. All right, we just continue to trace all the pattern pieces, and I have them all here. Everything matches. So now I'm just going to show you two more things. I'm going to show you that everything needs a grain line and notches. The first thing we need to do with the grain line is we set the center front. Because we said the center front is on a fold line, this is vertical on the garment, we're going to put the grain line, which is about 2 inches from the folded line. I'm going to take a straight ruler like this, and I'm going to draw in a straight line and put arrows. Once you put the arrows in, that's an indication of the grain line. When you see a home sewing pattern, you usually see on the fold and all this craziness like this. On a professional pattern, you really don't do that, because on a professional pattern, you're actually going to be cutting it open. So you want the straight grain. On that grain line, you can put all the information, but we're not going to go into that right now. On the back, since this is a straight line and this is the seam allowance for the back, we're going to use our ruler and go 2 inches again from the center back and draw a grain line. And that's your vertical grain line. Your facing has to have the same grain line. So if you're going up and down vertical on the garment, you have to do that on your facing. So I'm going to go ahead on the fold line, draw another straight line with arrows. So that's the grain line for the center front. And this is the grain line for the center back. The last thing that you need to do, or second to last thing I should say, is notches. A professional pattern indication uses this special little gadget that makes like little narrow holes. On all the seam allowance, all the seams I should say, you put a notch. So that tells you that this is a 1-inch seam and this is a 1/4 of an inch seam. And here we go. I'm just going to put little notches on all the seam allowances. And I have it here on, so when this is cut out, it indicates what your seam allowance is. This is going to be a 1/4 of an inch because I put a 1/4 of an inch tack for the neckline. This is going to be a 1/2 of an inch, so you see the notch that way. And it continues on. So every intersection should have a notch. And the most important notch is this design line that we have here with the gathers. This portion of the garment was a little bit of ease that was gathered like that for the facing. So we have to get the front that goes with it right here. And this is the front. Notice how the facing is smaller than the garment. Again, because we had the notch that's right here. So this notch indicates at this notch, that means it's telling the sewer that they have to put all this gathers, all that fabric, into this little space. And that's how that is done. And I'll show that in the sewing process. But now that you have all of your pieces together, here we go. The last thing you need to do in a professional realm is take all the pieces. And I usually do it on the bottom of the pattern like this. And we're going to make a punched hole so that we can hang this up. So we have the rabbit that I showed you in one of my earlier videos here. It makes a round hole. And it also has a little marking where it ends so that you go at the same distance every single time. I'm going to put all the pattern pieces like that. Punch a hole with the rabbit. So now you have a way to hang this pattern up. I have my pattern hook, and there is the very first pattern ready to cut onto fabric. This is just the beginning of the process for designing. The draping process that I did here, then transferring it to the paper so it can be easily cut into and accurately cut into fabric. and to continue. So this portion of the how-to is finished for the basic design onto the paper pattern. Next, I will be showing you how to cut this onto the fabric professionally. Thank you for watching, and I appreciate all your comments, so let me know what you want to see next. Thank you.